My name is Sophia Ashford. I'm 68 years old, and last Mother's Day my son found me living in a shed. Not a garden shed with clay pots and a wooden bench, a utility shed. 10 by 12-foot concrete floor, one cracked window behind the First Baptist Church in Harlow, Georgia. I had a cot, a space heater, and a reading lamp that flickered when the wind picked up. My son Derek had been sending his wife Lisa $4,200 every month. 11 months, $46,200 for a lakefront condo I never saw, never touched, never slept in. Lisa created fake lease documents. She took photos of an Airbnb she rented for one afternoon. She made bi-weekly check-in calls on a flip phone she gave me, a phone that could only reach her number. She told Derek I was happy. She told Derek I was settled. She told Derek I was getting a little confused sometimes. The money went to her sister's boutique. It went to day spas and designer handbags. It went everywhere except to me. But here's what none of them knew. For 11 months, I hadn't been suffering. I'd been drawing. Welcome back to Alpha Mom Stories, where real mothers share what happened when someone underestimated them. If you're new here, subscribe and hit the bell. You'll want to be here for every chapter. Before we go further, drop a comment if you've ever stayed quiet to protect someone you love. Sophia's story might change your mind about silence. I drew my first botanical illustration at 23, a Carolina rose. 42 petals, each one shaded with the number 4 graphite pencil, each vein mapped like a river delta. My professor at the Savannah College of Art and Design held it up and said, "This is not a drawing. This is a witness statement." That became my career, 40 years of it. 3 published field guides, Southern Wildflowers of the Piedmont Coastal Grasses of Georgia, and Deciduous Trees of the Appalachian Corridor. Libraries carry them. Graduate students cite them. My name is in the index of 11 university textbooks. I married Ray Ashford at 24. He was handsome and certain about everything. Certain I should stop working, certain I should stay home, certain that my drawings were a hobby, not a profession, despite the royalty checks that paid our mortgage. I left Ray at 35. Derek was 8. I packed 2 suitcases, my sketch journal, and a tube of lavender hand cream my mother always kept by her easel. I raised Derek alone. Worked from a drafting table in the kitchen while he did homework at the counter. He watched me draw a Quercus virginiana from a branch I'd collected in Forsyth Park, and he said, "Mom, why do you count the leaves?" I told him, "Accuracy is love. You pay attention to what matters." Derek grew up careful and precise. He studied engineering at Georgia Tech, then moved to Seattle for his first job. 3 years ago, the company opened an Atlanta office and he transferred. Vice President of Engineering by 41. Salary $340,000 a year. He called me every Sunday. I retired at 65, volunteered as the church organist at First Baptist, played hymns on a 1974 Baldwin that needed tuning every 6 weeks. Life was small, and mine. Then my son married Lisa Harmon. Lisa met Derek at a tech industry networking event in Bellevue. She was an interior designer, honey blonde hair, a laugh that arrived 2 seconds before it was earned, and a talent for making herself the center of a room without raising her voice. She didn't yell, she redirected. Every conversation about my career, my life, my preferences, Lisa gently steered it somewhere else. At the wedding, I gave a toast. Lisa interrupted halfway through to thank the caterer. Derek didn't notice. He was in love. I recognized the pattern because I'd married it once. In those early months, I think Lisa was genuinely lonely. Derek called me 3 times a week. He canceled a dinner reservation with her once to stay on the phone with me for 45 minutes. I'd had a rough day, and he wanted to make sure I was all right. I didn't ask him to cancel, but Lisa didn't know that. Within 6 months, Lisa became Derek's operations manager. She handled the household accounts, the insurance, the tax filings. Derek trusted her completely. Why wouldn't he? She was organized. She was capable. She made spreadsheets. When Derek set up $4,200 a month for my housing, a lakefront condo in Harlow, 30 minutes from the church, Lisa volunteered to find the place. She said she'd handle the lease, the deposits, the move-in logistics. Derek was relieved. He was managing a team of 90 engineers. He didn't have time. I was relieved too. I'd never been good with paperwork. My skill was observation, not administration. I packed my things in 4 boxes. My sketch journal went in the leather satchel my mother left me. My lavender hand cream went in the side pocket. I labeled every box in my careful draftsman's print. Lisa called on June 15th. "The condo needs 2 weeks of renovation," she said. "Just cosmetic. New countertops. I found you a temporary spot." Her voice was warm and efficient. She gave me a flip phone. "Use this until you're settled. Reception's spotty at the condo. This one gets better signal." The flip phone had one number programmed Lisa's. Here's how the scheme worked. I've had time to piece it together. On June 12th, Lisa rented a lakefront Airbnb on Lake Harlow for one night. 2 bedrooms, hardwood floors, a porch facing the water. She took 37 photographs, wide angles of the kitchen close-ups of the bathroom tile, the view from the bedroom window at sunset. She took them methodically, like staging a catalog shoot, because that's what she was. She created a fake lease. I've seen it since. Derek showed me. It looked professional. Harlow Lake Properties, LLC. A company that doesn't exist. Monthly rent $4,200. Tenant Sophia Ashford. The letterhead had a stock photo logo of a heron. She redirected my mail to a P.O. box in Macon, 45 minutes away. Medicare summaries, bank statements, everything. She told the post office I was traveling. She told Derek the condo's mailroom handled forwarding. Every month, Derek's $4,200 landed in what he thought was a property management account. It was Lisa's personal checking. She split it 3 ways. $2,000 went to her sister Vanessa's boutique, Velvet and Vine in Savannah. $1,500 went to Lisa personally, spa treatments, clothing, restaurants. $700 sat in a buffer fund in case Derek asked for a receipt or a bank reference she'd need to fabricate. The 2 weeks of renovation became 4, then 6. Then Lisa stopped mentioning a timeline altogether. She sent Derek the Airbnb photos as progress updates. "Mom's settling in beautifully," she told him. "She loves the view." I didn't have a view. I didn't have a condo. I had a utility shed behind the First Baptist Church, and by the 3rd week, I understood that no one was coming to move me anywhere. The temporary spot was the plan. The shed was 10 feet by 12 feet. I measured it with my arm span, which I've known since art school, 5 feet 4 inches, fingertip to fingertip. 2 arm spans long, a little more than 2 arm spans wide. Concrete floor, 1 window cracked in the upper left corner patched with packing tape. No insulation. The walls were unpainted cinder block. When it rained, water seeped along the base and pooled near the door. Pastor Ruth Givens gave me the cot. She carried it from the church basement herself. She's 62 and built like a woman who has moved furniture alone her whole life. She brought a space heater, the kind with orange coils that smell like burning dust, and a reading lamp with a flexible neck. 2 weeks, Ruth said. Then we figure this out. Margaret Freely from the congregation brought food Tuesdays and Thursdays, a sandwich. An apple, sometimes soup in a thermos. She was 74, widowed, lived 3 blocks from the church. She never asked why I was there. She just brought the food and sat with me while I ate. I played the organ every Sunday, walked from the shed through the back door of the church, sat on the bench, played How Great Thou Art and Amazing Grace and whatever Pastor Ruth had chosen. Nobody in the congregation knew where I slept. They thought I had a condo on the lake. Georgia summer hit first. June and July. The shed reached 93 degrees by noon. I propped the door open with a hymnal. August cooled to 88. September 70. By November, the space heater was running all day and the temperature inside barely held at 55. I opened my sketch journal on December 14th, drew the first page by lamplight. December 14th. I found something. Lisa's mother is Brenda Harmon, and Brenda carried a doctrine forged from 15 years of her own bad marriage. Brenda married Frank Harmon in 1982. Frank's mother, Dorothy, controlled the household finances for 15 years. Dorothy decided what Brenda could spend. Dorothy reviewed grocery receipts. Dorothy called the bank to verify check amounts. By the time Dorothy died in 1997, Brenda had developed a doctrine. Mothers-in-law are the enemy. They control. They manipulate. They poison sons against wives. Brenda raised Lisa and Vanessa on this doctrine like it was scripture. Your husband's mother will try to take him from you. You take control first. It didn't matter that I'd never asked Derek for $1, never criticized Lisa's decorating, never dropped by unannounced. Brenda's playbook had one move neutralize the mother-in-law before she strikes. So Brenda coached Lisa. I know this from the text messages Derek eventually found on Lisa's iPad. Brenda's advice was specific and practiced. Tell Derek his mother sounded confused on the phone. Say she repeated herself 3 times. Mention that your friend's mother started the same way. Little lapses, then bigger ones. This was the second weapon. The first weapon was the money. The second was the word they planted in Derek's ear like a seed in wet soil. Dementia. Every few weeks, Lisa would sigh on the phone with Derek. Your mom asked me the same question twice today. Or, she couldn't remember what day it was. Or the line that Brenda scripted herself, the one I found in a text message dated September 4th. Your mother is confused lately. You know how she gets. Derek didn't know how I get. He hadn't seen me in 4 months. That was the point. Vanessa Harmon opened Velvet and Vine on Broughton Street in Savannah in March of the previous year. It was a women's clothing boutique. Silk scarves, linen dresses, handmade jewelry from vendors Vanessa found on Instagram. The aesthetic was Southern boho. Price tags, high foot traffic low. By June, the boutique was hemorrhaging money. Rent on Broughton Street was $6,800 a month. Vanessa had invested $80,000 of her savings. She was 3 months from closing. Lisa made the offer in July, 1 month after I moved into the shed. I can send you $2,000 a month. Derek won't notice. He makes $340 a year. $2,000 a month for 11 months. $22,000 total to Velvet and Vine. The rest of my housing money, the other $24,200 Lisa spent on herself. I've seen the bank statements now. Azure Day Spa in Buckhead. $450 a month every month like clockwork. Tory Burch sandals, $389. A Gucci crossbody bag, $1,100. Hair appointments at a salon on Peachtree that charged $220 for a cut and color. $16,500 in personal spending, $700 a month held in reserve. Vanessa knew the money came from Derek. She didn't ask where Derek thought it was going. She told herself it was family. She told herself Lisa had it handled. She told herself a lot of things that let her keep the lights on at Velvet and Vine. That's how it works. Nobody has to be a monster. They just have to stop asking questions at the right moment. Vanessa stopped asking. Lisa stopped explaining. And I kept sleeping on a cot in a cinder block shed with a cracked window. December 14th, 28 degrees outside. The space heater glowed orange, but the cold came through the walls like the cinder blocks were made of ice. I couldn't sleep. My hip ached from the cot. The canvas had stretched after 6 months and sagged in the middle, so I slept curved like a comma. I pulled the reading lamp closer and opened my sketch journal. Page 1. I drew the shed interior of the cot against the left wall, the space heater in the corner, its cord snaking to the single outlet, the cracked window with its packing tape bandage, the door slightly warped at the bottom, where water came in my satchel hanging from a nail, the hymnal propping the door. Though that night the door was closed, I used the same technique I'd used for 40 years. Observation, first proportion, second, detail third. I measured angles with my pencil held at arm's length the way I'd measured the branching patterns of live oaks. I shaded the concrete floor with cross-hatching so fine you could feel the grit. Through the wall, I heard organ music. Someone was practicing, probably young David Kim from the youth group working on the prelude for Sunday. The notes came through the cinder block muffled and warm like hearing a conversation in another room. Margaret came the next morning, Thursday. She brought a ham sandwich, a thermos of tomato soup, and a tube of lavender hand cream. "Your hands are cracking," she said. She'd noticed at Sunday service. I held the cream and almost cried. My mother's brand, the same one I'd packed in my satchel, now empty for months. Margaret sat on the floor. There was no second chair and watched me eat. She said, "This isn't temporary anymore, is it, Sophia?" I decided that night I would document everything, every detail. Every drawing would be evidence. January 8th. I was carrying recycling bins from the church kitchen to the pickup area behind the building. Pastor Ruth had asked me to help, and I was glad for the task. The bin sat next to the shed, my shed. I set a bin down and paper shifted. A Zillow listing printed on standard copy paper, 3 pages, stapled a lakefront property on Lake Harlow, 2 bedrooms, hardwood floors, a porch listed as available, no current tenant. Across the top in handwriting I recognized because I'd seen it on my fake lease. Lisa had written, "Use this for Dee's reference. D. Derek." I kept looking. Underneath the listing, a receipt from Azure Day Spa in Buckhead, $450. Signature Lisa, Ashford, date December 2nd. She'd been in Harlow. She'd come to the church probably to check on something, drop something off, maintain the fiction, and she'd thrown her papers in the church recycling bin instead of taking them home, lazy or careless. Maybe both. I sat on the ground behind the bins in the January cold and studied the Zillow listing. The condo was real. It existed, but it was listed as available, no tenant. Nobody had ever moved in. The photographs on the listing matched the photos Lisa had sent Derek, the same kitchen, the same sunset view, the same bathroom tile. She'd taken them during a one-day rental and never gone back. I carried the papers to the shed. I taped them into my sketch journal on pages 7 and 8. Then I drew them. The listing reproduced in graphite. The receipt, every digit of the total rendered in my draftsman's print. The handwriting sample, "Use this for Dee's reference." A botanical illustrator draws what is not what should be. I drew what was. Lisa ran the deception like a project plan. Bi-weekly check-in calls, always on the flip phone, always brief. "How are you doing, Mom?" She called me Mom. "The condo treating you well?" I'd say yes, because what was I going to say? I didn't have Derek's number. I didn't have internet. I had a flip phone with one contact. She sent Derek photos, the same Airbnb images, recycled with different crops and filters. A wider shot of the kitchen for July, a close-up of flowers on the porch table for September. Flowers she'd placed there during the original one-day staging. Derek never noticed the light was the same in every photo. Why would he? He trusted his wife. When Derek wanted to visit Lisa, blocked him. September. "Your mom's going on a church retreat that weekend. Bad timing." November. "She's got a terrible cold. She doesn't want you to catch it." Derek offered to come anyway. Lisa said, "She specifically asked me to tell you not to. You know how independent she is." She was right about that. I am independent. It's what made the whole thing work. For FaceTime calls, Lisa had a system. She propped her laptop behind her phone, the laptop screen showing one of the Airbnb photos. When Derek FaceTimed, Lisa would answer, holding her phone at an angle. "I'm at the condo checking on Mom," with the condo photo visible behind her. She'd say I was napping or in the bath or at the grocery store. Derek would say, "Tell her I love her." Lisa would say, "Of course." He sent that love to a woman who pocketed it. I never received a single message from my son between June and May. 11 months of silence manufactured by the person sleeping next to him. January through February, the journal grew. Page 12. A dandelion pushing through a crack in the concrete floor. I found it in late January, a pale shoot reaching toward the window light. I drew it the way I would have drawn it for a field guide. Root structure estimated by the crack pattern stem measured at 4 3/4 inches. Leaves mapped in their basal rosette. Taraxacum officinale. Common dandelion. Growing in my bedroom floor. Page 18. Margaret's Thursday sandwich. Turkey on wheat cut diagonal with a dill pickle spear and 3 potato chips in a folded napkin. I drew it like a specimen plate. Provenance Margaret Freely. Date February 6th. Habitat Utility Shed, First Baptist Church, Harlow, Georgia. Page 23. The space heater coils at night. Orange light rendered in graphite by layering. 6 passes of different pressure, darkest at the center, fading outward. The shadows it cast on the cinder block wall. The way dust particles drifted in the thermal column above it. Page 31. Self-portrait. I hadn't looked in a proper mirror in months. The shed had no mirror. I used the cracked window at night. When the lamp was on and the outside was dark, the glass became reflective enough. I drew myself at 68, thinner than June, cheekbones sharper, eyes the same. Temperature noted in the corner 34 degrees Fahrenheit. Page 37, side by side. Left, half of the page, the Airbnb kitchen from Lisa's photo. Reproduced in graphite. Right half, my shed interior. Same scale, same level of detail. 2 residences, 1 fake, 1 real. Both rendered with the precision of a woman who has spent 40 years proving that accuracy is love. Margaret brought lavender hand cream again in February. A botanical illustrator draws what is not what should be. March. I learned what Lisa had been telling Derek about my mind. Margaret heard it from her daughter who worked at the pharmacy in town. Derek had called the pharmacy asking about early onset dementia medications. My wife says my mother's been confused. He told the pharmacist, repeating herself, forgetting appointments. Margaret told me on a Tuesday, sitting on the floor of the shed with her thermos. She said it carefully, the way you tell someone bad news when you're not sure how they'll take it. I took it like a diagnosis, not of dementia, of Lisa's strategy. She wasn't just stealing the money. She was building a narrative that would explain away anything I said if I ever got the chance to say it. If I told Derek the truth, Lisa had already planted the response. See, this is what I've been telling you. She's confused. It was elegant, cruel, but elegant. Remove the money, remove the phone access, remove the credibility. A 3-legged stool of control, and I was supposed to sit on the floor. She should have picked a woman who draws flowers from memory. That week, I filled 4 pages with botanical diagrams drawn entirely from recall. Rosa Carolina, 42 petals, in the correct spiral, phyllotaxis stamens, counted and placed, leaf margins serrated at the proper frequency. Quercus virginiana, branching pattern, acorn cap with its scaled texture bark, cross-hatched to show the furrowed ridges. Magnolia grandiflora, 6. Tepals, the waxy surface rendered with burnished graphite. I drew them without references. No field guide, no specimens, pure memory. Every diagram annotated with the Latin binomial, the common name, the page number of the textbook where I'd originally published the illustration. A confused woman does not draw 42 petals in the correct spiral phyllotaxis. That was my point. If someone told your family you were losing your mind while you sat in a shed with no phone, no internet, no way to defend yourself, what would you do? I picked up my pencil. I drew the proof of my own sanity, 1 petal at a time. Keep watching. Because Lisa's system had a flaw and she didn't see it coming. February into March, the coldest winter in 8 years, according to the Harlow Gazette that Margaret brought me wrapped around a sandwich. I drew the frost patterns on the window. They bloomed overnight like ferns. Asplenium, I thought, or maybe polypodium. I rendered them as botanical specimens, winter flora of the shed window. Harlow, Georgia, formed at 26 degrees. Fahrenheit sublimated by noon. It was the only garden I had. My body was changing. My right hip ached from the cot every morning, a deep stiffness that took 20 minutes of walking to loosen. I'd lost 11 pounds since June. My Sunday dress hung like a curtain. My hands cracked despite the lavender cream. I could feel every knuckle when I gripped the pencil. I still played organ every Sunday, walked through the back door, sat on the bench, played the hymns. Nobody commented on my weight. People don't look closely at a 68-year-old woman playing church organ. They look at the hymnal. The first week of March, Mrs. Gladys Patterson caught me after service. She was 81, sharp as a box cutter, and she leaned close to my ear. "Sophia," she said, "I saw your daughter-in-law at the North Point Mall on Saturday. She carrying 3 Nordstrom bags and wearing sunglasses indoors." She paused. "Does she visit you at the condo often?" I said, "Not often enough." Mrs. Patterson gave me a look that said she knew more than she was sharing. I gave her one back. March 17th, a Tuesday. I was sorting recycling again. It had become my habit, my chance to check for Lisa's carelessness. And I found what I was looking for. Lisa made her first real mistake. March 17th. Pastor Ruth found a bundle of mail behind the shed wedged between the cinder block wall and the church's water heater access panel. Rubber banded damp from a week of rain. Someone had been redirecting my mail to a P.O. box in Macon, but this bundle had slipped through. A forwarding error, or maybe a substitute mail carrier who followed the old route. 6 pieces, 3 credit card offers addressed to Sophia Ashford, 1 Medicare summary of benefits, 1 bank statement from my savings account showing a balance of $43 and a Mother's Day card. The card was from Derek. It had a watercolor magnolia on the front. He always picked cards with flowers because he knew, inside his handwriting. Mom, I hope the condo is everything you deserve. I love you more than I can say. Here's a little extra for your birthday month. A check for $5,000 made out to Sophia Ashford. The check had been cashed, endorsed on the back with a signature that was close to mine but wrong. The S was too looped. The A in Ashford was too wide. Lisa had practiced my signature, but she'd learned it from documents, not from watching me sign. A forger copies the shape. The original knows the rhythm. I sat in the shed and drew the card, drew the check, drew the forged signature next to my real signature side by side with annotations pointing to every discrepancy. 12 differences. I counted them like petals, $5,000 stolen and cashed. I made my decision that night. I would not call anyone. I would not confront Lisa. I would wait for Mother's Day. Derek always comes to Georgia for Mother's Day. He's done it every year since college. He drives down from Atlanta where he and Lisa live, and he takes me to brunch. This year, I would take him something better than a brunch reservation. I would bring him 51 pages of the truth. April. I showed Pastor Ruth the sketch journal. She sat on my cot. I stood, there was nowhere else, and turned pages slowly. She's a woman who reads scripture for a living, so she reads carefully. She didn't rush. She studied the dandelion. She studied the frost patterns. She lingered on page 31, the self-portrait at 34 degrees. She stopped a long time on page 44, the forged check. Sophia, she said, this is 40 pages of evidence. 51, I said, when I'm finished. Ruth closed the journal and looked at me over her reading glasses. What's the plan? The plan was simple. Derek comes to Georgia for Mother's Day. He goes to the Atlanta house first. Lisa would have everything arranged. I needed to arrive at that house. I needed to sit in a chair, open this journal, and let the drawings speak. Margaret helped me find a dress at the Goodwill on Pine Street. $12.99. Navy blue, cotton modest collar. It fit the way my Sunday dress used to fit before I lost the weight. Margaret ironed it in the church kitchen. Deacon James Harris, who drove the church van on Wednesdays for the food pantry, agreed to drive me to Atlanta on Mother's Day morning, 2 hours each way. He didn't ask questions either. Harlow people are like that. They help first and ask later if they ask at all. I spent the last week of April finishing the journal. Page 50 drew the shed door from the inside. The warped bottom edge, the daylight leaking in the hymnal I used as a doorstop. Page 51 was the last one. A self-portrait. The same cracked window as page 31, but now springlight. Dogwood visible outside. My face steady, 11 months of silence, one morning of truth. Then Margaret told me something that tightened my stomach. Lisa's mother was coming too. The week before Mother's Day, Lisa was operating at full capacity. I know the details now because Derek told me everything after. Lisa ordered $800 of catering from a French bistro in Buckhead. Quiche fruit platters, a cheese board with imported brie and honeycomb champagne, 2 bottles of Veuve Clicquot, $87 each. She invited Derek's colleague, James Whitfield, and his wife Sarah to brunch. Witnesses, though not the kind she planned. James was a senior director at Derek's company. The kind of guest who makes a brunch look like a celebration, not an obligation. Lisa assembled a gift basket labeled "From Mom." Scented candles, a cashmere throw, a card, signed in my handwriting or what Lisa thought was my handwriting. The same forged signature, the same looped S. She'd gotten comfortable with the forgery, comfortable enough to use it casually. Brenda arrived Friday evening. Lisa and Brenda sat in the kitchen drinking Sauvignon Blanc while Derek worked late. According to the text messages Derek later found, Lisa told her mother, "Everything's covered." Sophia thinks Derek is visiting her at the condo next weekend. I told her he had to postpone. Brenda's response typed at 9:47 p.m. The old woman isn't going anywhere. She was right about one thing. I wasn't going anywhere. I was sitting in a shed 2 hours south finishing page 51 by lamplight, drawing my own face with the same precision I'd given to every Rosa Carolina, every Quercus virginiana, every specimen I'd ever committed to paper. My satchel was packed. The journal was inside. Margaret's lavender hand cream was in the side pocket. The Goodwill dress hung from a nail on the wall. I set the alarm on the flip phone for 5:30 a.m. One number programmed, but it still kept time. Mother's Day, 6 a.m. I woke in the shed for the last time. The space heater had clicked off during the night. May in Georgia warm enough without it. 58 degrees. I wrote the temperature in the margin of page 51 like I'd done on every drawing. A habit. A record. I washed my face with water from the utility sink behind the church, changed into the Goodwill dress, applied lavender hand cream, picked up the leather satchel with the journal inside, walked out of the shed, and pulled the door closed. The hymnal was still on the floor inside. I didn't need a doorstop anymore. 7:30. Margaret met me at the church steps with a thermos of coffee and a blueberry muffin from the Winn-Dixie bakery. She'd put a ribbon on the thermos. She was crying but quietly. The way people cry when they're proud and scared at the same time. "You call me," she said, "whatever happens." I told her I would. I hugged her with one arm because the other held the satchel. She smelled like flour and dish soap. 8 a.m. Deacon Harris pulled the church van around. White 15-passenger First Baptist Church of Harlow painted on the side in maroon letters. I sat in the front passenger seat. The van smelled like hymnals and old upholstery. Deacon Harris tuned the radio to gospel and didn't say a word for 2 hours. 9:15, we pulled onto a tree-lined street in Druid Hills, Atlanta. Derek and Lisa's house. Brick colonial 2 stories, black shutters, azaleas blooming along the front walk, pink and coral, the variety called George Lindley Tabor. I knew the cultivar. I'd drawn it. Through the front window, I could see Lisa arranging flowers on the dining table. Behind her, Brenda poured champagne. I stepped out of the van, smoothed my dress across the front walk. I knocked. Derek opened the door. He was wearing a blue Oxford shirt, sleeves rolled. He looked at me and his face went through 3 expressions in 2 seconds. Confusion, recognition, pain. Mom. His voice cracked on the word. He pulled me into a hug so tight I felt his heart beat through the Oxford cloth. He smelled like coffee and aftershave, the same brand his father used to wear, which he didn't know because I'd never told him. "Lisa said you wanted to FaceTime today instead of a visit," he said, still holding my shoulders. "She said you weren't feeling up to company." I looked past him into the foyer. Lisa stood by the dining room archway. She was wearing a cream silk blouse and linen pants. Her hair was perfect. Her expression was not. She froze for 1 full second. I counted it. Then she recovered. Her face rearranged into warmth and surprise the way a stage actor finds the light. "Sophia, what a wonderful surprise." She moved towards me, arms open. "I was going to bring you leftovers this week. Derek isn't this wonderful. Your mom came all the way up." She reached for a hug. I accepted it. Her perfume was expensive, not lavender. "The condo is lovely in the photos, Lisa." I said it evenly the way I'd say the Latin name of a plant factual. I imagine it would be if I'd ever lived there. The room went quiet. Not silent. The catering was laid out. The champagne was poured. And somewhere in the kitchen, a timer was beeping. But the human sound stopped. Derek stopped. Lisa stopped. Brenda, visible through the dining room doorway with a champagne flute halfway to her mouth, stopped. I stood in the foyer with my satchel, 68 years old, $12.99 of Goodwill dress, 51 pages of evidence. Lisa laughed. It came too fast, like a reflex she couldn't control. A short, bright sound. The same laugh I'd heard at the networking event. The one that arrived 2 seconds before it was earned. "Oh, Sophia." She touched my arm. "See, this is what I was telling Derek. She gets a little mixed up sometimes. Mom, you've been at the condo since June. Remember the one on the lake with the porch? She looked at Derek. The look said, "See? This is what I warned you about." Derek was studying my face. He was an engineer. He looked at data, not narratives. "What do you mean, Mom?" "May I sit down?" I asked. Derek led me to the living room. Cream sofa, throw pillows, a coffee table with a coffee table book about Tuscan villas. I sat. I set the satchel on my lap. Lisa followed, positioning herself between me and Derek, which is what she always did. I opened the satchel, pulled out the sketch journal. It was a standard 9x12 hardbound sketchbook, the kind I'd used my entire career. The cover was scuffed. The spine was cracked from being opened flat hundreds of times. It smelled like graphite and lavender. "This is a habitat study," I said. I set it on the coffee table. 11 months of field observation. Lisa's smile tightened. "Maybe we should talk about this privately, Sophia." "Derek, your mom and I can—" "Let Mom talk, Lisa." Derek said it without raising his voice, but the temperature in the room changed. I've spent 40 years outdoors reading weather. I know when the pressure drops. I opened the journal to page 1. The shed interior measured labeled. Every detail rendered in the graphite precision of a woman who has made a career of seeing exactly what is in front of her. This is a 10x12 utility shed behind the First Baptist Church in Harlow, Georgia. This is where I've lived since June. I turned the pages slowly, the way I would present a field study to a publisher. No rush, let the drawing speak. Page 3. The shed interior dated June 20th. Temperature noted 89 degrees Fahrenheit. The cot. The space heater unplugged in the corner. The single outlet. The cracked window. I'd drawn the crack precisely. 17 inches long, branching at the midpoint, packing tape applied in 3 overlapping strips. "June," Derek said. He was doing the math. "That's when Lisa told me you moved in." Page 12. The dandelion. Taraxacum officinale. Pushing through the concrete crack. Stem 4 3/4 inches. Root system inferred by crack pattern. Drawn with the same technique I'd used in 3 published field guides. Page 18. Margaret sandwich. Turkey on wheat diagonal cut dill pickle spear, 3 potato chips in a folded napkin. Annotated, delivered by Margaret Freely. February 6th. Habitat utility shed. Derek touched the page. His fingertips rested on the sandwich drawing. He didn't speak. Page 31 self-portrait. Reflected in the cracked window, temperature 34 degrees. The woman in the drawing was thin cheekbones, visible, eyes clear and focused, the same eyes looking at him now from across the coffee table. Page 37, the side-by-side. Left the Airbnb kitchen reproduced from Lisa's photo, right the shed interior, same scale, same meticulous detail. 2 homes, 1 a lie. Lisa. Derek said her name once, 1 word. The way you say a word when it's the last time it will mean what it used to mean. Page 44. The Mother's Day card from Derek, the watercolor magnolia, the $5,000 check, the forged signature next to my real signature. 12 annotated differences. Lisa stood by the fireplace. She hadn't sat down. Her arms were crossed. Behind her, Brenda had set down the champagne flute. I turned to the section I'd labeled Evidence of Cognitive Function. Pages 45 through 48, Rosa Carolina, 42 petals. Each drawn from memory in the correct spiral phyllotaxis stamens, numbered and positioned, leaf margins serrated at the published frequency of 7 to 9 teeth per centimeter. Annotated with the page number of my original illustration in Southern Wildflowers of the Piedmont Quercus virginiana live oak. Branching patterns showing the characteristic horizontal spread acorn cap with scaled texture bark, rendered in cross-hatched furrows, Magnolia grandiflora, 6 tepals, waxy surface achieved through burnished graphite, a technique that requires pressing the pencil flat and rotating it in overlapping ellipses. Stamens approximately 170, pistils fused into a cone-shaped aggregate. I looked at Derek. Lisa told you I was confused, repeating myself, forgetting things. I tapped the Rosa Carolina. A confused woman does not draw 42 petals in the correct spiral phyllotaxis from memory. A confused woman does not annotate in Latin binomial nomenclature. A confused woman does not produce 4 pages of botanical diagrams that match her published work to the millimeter. Lisa uncrossed her arms. I can show you the lease, Derek. The condo management company. Show me the bank statements, Derek said. He wasn't looking at Lisa. He was looking at the journal, at 42 petals. At the proof that his mother's mind was exactly where it had always been. Sharp, precise, and paying attention to what matters. $46,200. 11 months. 51 drawings in a sketch journal that smelled like graphite and lavender hand cream. If you're still here, hit subscribe right now. You are going to want to see what Lisa said next and what Derek found when he opened his banking app. Trust me, the receipts are real, the numbers don't lie, and this story isn't over. Derek took his phone from his pocket, opened the banking app. I watched his thumb move across the screen. He was scrolling through transaction history. I set up an automatic transfer, he said. His voice was flat. Engineering voice. Diagnostic mode. $4,200 a month to what I thought was a property management account. Harlow Lake Properties. He turned the phone toward Lisa. This account, where does this go? Lisa didn't answer. Her hands were at her sides. The cream silk blouse had a small stain near the collar. Champagne, probably. She'd spilled when I walked in. I noticed because I notice. Derek kept scrolling. 4,200 times $1,146. 200. He was reading the deposits. Then he switched to another screen. The account details. This routes to a personal checking account. Your personal checking account, Lisa, not a property management company. He started reading transactions aloud. Each one precise, each one a nail. Azure Day Spa, $450 monthly. November, December. January, February. March, April. Velvet and Vine, $2,000 monthly. July through May. Tory Burch, $389. September 14th. Gucci, $1,100. October 2nd. The room was so quiet I could hear the catering timer still beeping in the kitchen. Nobody had turned it off. Something was burning. Derek looked up from the phone. Velvet and Vine, that's Vanessa's store. Lisa's lips parted, but no sound came out. Behind her, Brenda set her hand on the dining room table like she needed to hold herself upright. James Whitfield and his wife Sarah sat on the adjacent sofa. They hadn't said a word. James was a senior director. He'd sat through hostile board meetings. He knew when to be quiet and remember everything. Lisa dropped, not dramatically. She didn't throw herself down. Her knees simply gave. She sank to the living room floor in her linen pants and pressed her palms against the hardwood and cried. I was under pressure, she said. You don't understand. Vanessa was going to lose everything. The boutique, she put her whole savings in. I trying to help my sister. She looked up at Derek, mascara tracking. Your mother was always between us. She never accepted me. She was always watching, always judging with those quiet eyes. I sat on the cream sofa and said nothing, voice restraint. The discipline of a woman who has spent 40 years sitting still in fields waiting for the light to change so she can draw a flower at the right angle. I can outwait anyone. Derek stood over Lisa. He didn't kneel. He didn't reach for her. He looked at her the way an engineer looks at a failed component, not with anger, but with the cold clarity of someone identifying exactly where the system broke. My mother lived in a shed, he said, with a space heater in a Georgia winter. I was going to fix it, Lisa whispered. I was going to move her in the spring. $46,000 is not a mistake, Lisa. It's a plan. He said it quietly. My son has always been quiet when he's serious. He got that from me. Ray yelled. Derek measures. I reached over and touched Derek's hand. You didn't know I said. That was the whole point. She made sure you didn't know. He looked at me. His eyes were wet, but his jaw was set. 41 years old, and he still had the face of the 8-year-old who watched me pack 2 suitcases and leave his father. I should have come to Georgia, he said. You're here now. Derek picked up his phone again. This time he dialed. Vanessa. Speakerphone. His voice carried across the living room like a courtroom deposition. 11 months of transfers, $2,000 a month. From Lisa's account to Velvet and Vine, $22,000. Vanessa's voice came through thin and startled. Derek, Lisa said you approved the investment. She said you wanted to support the boutique. She said a lot of things. Did she say she was funding it with my mother's rent money? Silence on the line. Then Vanessa smaller. I didn't know where it came from. Lisa said it was discretionary. Brenda moved. She crossed from the dining room to the living room in 4 steps and reached for Derek's phone. Give me that. You don't talk to my daughter that way. This is a family matter. Derek pulled the phone back. He held it above his head. He's 6'1". Brenda is 5'5". He kept his eyes on hers. Family matter, he repeated. Interesting, since we're talking about family. He lowered the phone and tapped the screen 3 times. I found Lisa's iPad this morning open on the kitchen counter. She left her messages up. Lisa's head snapped up from the floor. September 4th, Derek read. Text from Brenda Harmon. Tell Derek his mother sounded confused on the phone. October 11th. Say she repeated herself 3 times. November 19th. Mention that your friend's mother started the same way. And my personal favorite Friday evening 9:47 p.m. 2 days ago. He looked at Brenda. The old woman isn't going anywhere. Brenda's face didn't change. She had the face of a woman who had rehearsed her convictions so many times they'd calcified. Lisa from the floor. You read my iPad. Derek, you read my mother's mail. Derek set down the phone. He turned to me. The room was heavy with champagne and burn catering and the particular silence that follows when every lie in a room has been named. Mom. His voice was different now. Not diagnostic, not engineering flat, just a son. Where did you live? I set my hands on the sketch journal lavender cream on my fingertips, graphite under my nails. I looked at my son and I told him the truth the same way I'd told it on 51 pages, plainly, precisely, without decoration. Son, I live in a shed behind the Baptist church. The room didn't gasp. There was no dramatic intake of breath. It was worse than that. It was silence so complete I could hear the azaleas moving in the wind outside the front window. Coral and pink. George Lindley Tabor. Beautiful. I wasn't hiding, I said. I was drawing. Derek took the journal from the coffee table. He held it in both hands the way you hold something that matters. He turned the pages slowly, not rating them this time, just moving through them, letting the graphite world pass under his fingertips. He stopped on the dandelion. He stopped on the self-portrait. He stopped on Margaret's sandwich. He lifted the journal close to his face and breathed in. Lavender, he said. Margaret brings me hand cream, I said, the same kind Grandma used. Derek closed the journal. He set it on the coffee table with both hands. This is the most important book you've ever made, he said. I stood. The Goodwill dress hung loose on my frame. I was 68 years old and 11 pounds lighter than the woman who'd packed a satchel last June, and I was standing in a living room that cost more per month than the entirety of my possessions. I'm not going to yell, I said. I raised my son to solve problems with facts, not volume, so here are the facts. I looked at Lisa still on the floor. You isolated me. You stole my mail. You forged my signature. You took $46,200 that was meant to keep me safe, and you spent it on spa treatments and handbags while I slept on a cot in a building with no insulation. I looked at Vanessa, still on speakerphone, still silent. You accepted $22,000 from your sister and never asked where it came from. You didn't want to know. That's not innocence. That's convenience. I looked at Brenda. You taught your daughter that a mother-in-law is an enemy to be neutralized. Your mother-in-law may have been controlling. I am not your mother-in-law, and I am not Dorothy. But you treated me like her ghost. I picked up the satchel, slid the journal back inside. I don't want revenge. I've never wanted revenge. I want to go home. I want a room with a window that isn't cracked. I want to draw flowers from life instead of memory, and I want my son to know the truth. That's all I came for. Derek stood next to me. He put his hand on my shoulder, not the grip of a man who's falling apart, but the steady hand of a man who has decided what happens next. Lisa. His voice was level measured, the same tone he used to deliver performance reviews to engineers who hadn't met their metrics. You will return $46,200 by Monday. Transfer it to an account I'll set up tonight. I'll text you the routing number. Lisa opened her mouth. Derek continued. Our prenup has a fraud clause section 11. You signed it. Misappropriation of marital funds for undisclosed purposes constitutes grounds for dissolution without spousal support. I'm calling David Feinstein tomorrow morning. He turned to Brenda. You are not welcome in this house. You will not see our children until you've completed 6 months of family therapy with a licensed counselor of my choosing, not yours, mine. He picked up the phone. Vanessa was still on the line. Vanessa, you have 90 days to return $22,000. After that, I file a police report. Wire fraud, theft by deception. Those are felony charges in Georgia. Vanessa started to say something. Derek ended the call. James Whitfield cleared his throat from the sofa. He and Sarah had not moved during any of this. James looked at Derek with the professional steadiness of a man who understood that he had just witnessed something that might be referenced later. We're witnesses, James said. Whatever you need. Derek nodded. Thank you, James. Lisa pulled herself up from the floor. She pressed her palms against her thighs and lifted her chin. The mascara had dried in streaks. Her cream silk blouse was wrinkled. She looked at Derek with an expression I recognized. The last card. The one you play when every other hand has lost. I'm pregnant, she said. The room held still. Derek looked at her. He looked at her for a long time. Not with cruelty, not with softness, with the careful assessment of a man who had just watched 11 months of lies unfold on a coffee table. You think, he said slowly, that on the same day you were caught stealing $46,000 from my mother and forging her signature and telling me she has dementia. You think today is the day to announce a pregnancy? Lisa didn't answer. Her chin stayed up, but her eyes had lost their calculation. She'd played the card and it hadn't landed. I picked up my satchel from the coffee table, settled the strap on my shoulder, touched the side pocket where the lavender cream sat. The rest of the pages are for new flowers, I said to no one in particular, to myself. Derek took my arm, not holding me up, walking with me. The way he used to walk with me to the car after church when he was 10, his hand on my elbow, serious and proud. You're coming home with me, he said, right now. We walked past Lisa, past Brenda, past the catering trays with their wilted garnishes and the champagne going flat in crystal flutes, past the gift basket labeled from Mom with its forged card, past the Tuscan Villa coffee table book and the cream sofa pillows and everything Lisa had arranged to prove that this was a family that worked. At the door, I paused. I couldn't help it. I turned back. Lisa, I said, you spent $1,100 on a Gucci bag. Margaret Freely spent $6 on a tube of lavender hand cream. One of those kept me alive. Brenda started to speak. I didn't wait for it. Derek and I walked down the front path together. The azaleas were blooming on both sides, coral and pink. Full sun healthy specimens. The George Lindley Taper cultivar. I draw them later from memory. I could do that. It was the best Mother's Day I'd had in 11 years. 3 weeks later, this is where everything stood. Lisa Derek filed for divorce on the Tuesday after Mother's Day. David Feinstein, his attorney, invoked the prenup fraud clause section, 11 misappropriation of marital funds. Lisa was entitled to no spousal support. The $46,200 was returned by the Monday deadline. Lisa transferred it from the buffer account and from Brenda, who had to sell her Toyota Highlander to cover her portion. Lisa moved into Brenda's townhouse in Marietta. The pregnancy was never confirmed. Lisa never provided a test result, never named a doctor, never mentioned it again. Derek's attorney noted the claim in the filing as unsubstantiated and strategically timed. Vanessa. She sold Velvet and Vine in June for $45,000, less than half of what she'd invested. She paid back $22,000 to Derek within the 90-day window. The boutique's new owner renamed it and sells candles now. Vanessa moved back to Marietta into Brenda's townhouse with Lisa, 2 sisters and a mother who taught them that mothers-in-law are the enemy, all living under one roof with the consequences of that teaching. Brenda Derek banned her from contact with his children, my grandchildren, whom I hadn't seen in 11 months either. Brenda refused the therapy condition. She told Derek he was being manipulated by Sophia, which, given that Sophia's manipulation consisted of sitting quietly and drawing flowers, struck me as a generous assessment of my powers. Last I heard, Brenda was attending a women's Bible study that she described to friends as healing work. No was involved. Sophia. That's me. Derek moved me into his guest suite for the first 2 weeks. Queen bed, private bathroom, a window that faced the backyard garden. I slept 12 hours the first night. My hip stopped aching within a week. Then Derek found me a real lakefront condo, not the Airbnb, a real one, on Lake Harlow, 15 minutes from the church. 2 bedrooms, hardwood floors, a screened porch with a view of the water. $3,200 a month paid directly from Derek's account to the landlord's account. No intermediary, no Lisa, no Harlow Lake Properties, LLC. I went back to the shed one last time. Margaret came with me. Pastor Ruth unlocked the door. The cot was still there, the space heater, the reading lamp with the flexible neck, the cracked window. The dandelion was gone. It had bloomed and gone to seed while I was in Atlanta, and the fluff had blown through the crack and scattered. I drew the empty room, the last page of a new journal, page 1. Margaret cried. She tried not to, but she did. Standing in the doorway with her arms crossed and her chin trembling, I hugged her and told her that the lavender hand cream had saved my hands and probably saved the rest of me too. Pastor Ruth framed the drawing of the shed interior page, one of the original journal, and hung it in the church hallway. Derek visits every 2 weeks, drives down from Atlanta on Saturday morning, stays through Sunday. He sits on the screen porch and drinks coffee while I draw. The sketch journal sits on my new coffee table, 51 pages. Anyone can open it. If you're watching this and you think silence is always strength, I want to tell you something. Silence isn't always strength. Sometimes it's just silence. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is open a book and say, this is what happened. Every page, every drawing, every temperature reading in the margin. You don't have to yell, you don't have to fight, you just have to be precise. Accuracy, as I've told you, is love. I'm sitting on my new balcony. The lake is silver this morning. My sketch journal is open. My fingers smell like lavender hand cream. I'm drawing a magnolia from life, not from memory. A real branch. Real light, real petals. Finally, that's my story. 11 months, 51 drawings, and one Mother's Day that changed everything. If this reminded you to check on someone you love, do it today. Share this with a mother who's been underestimated. Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.